What's going on, guys? It's M00 Photo, and today we're going to be talking about how to properly set up your Sony FS7. I'm not an expert at this camera, but if I had someone to refer you to, I would most likely refer you to, I think his name is Alex Chapman. He is amazing when it comes to figuring out, sorting out the ins and outs of this camera. Or Felix Bloom, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I think that's his name. He's actually really knowledgeable on this camera. He actually has a long 45-minute review, which is what I watched. I watched his review and Mr. Chapman's reviews as well, in order to gain enough knowledge on how to operate the camera. So I'm just gonna go with you on my basic settings on the Sony FS7. So I have the FS7 Mark 1. I'm not referring to the Mark 2. Based on what I've heard, there is not many differences between the two, but I just wanted to caveat that I'm using the Mark 1, so there is not mistake, like weird questions later that, oh well, my camera doesn't work like that. I don't know anything about the Mark II because I've never used it. So before I get started, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the bell button, so you'll be notified on future reviews and videos. We're a family here, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask them anytime. Somebody in the comment will address them, if not myself. I review my comments daily, so yeah, feel free to let us a comment and I will get back to you as soon as possible. We're just going to talk a little bit about the FS7. Just to mention, right now I'm recording on an Atomos Shogun 4K out of the SDI port, just so I can get the viewfinder on my footage. That way you guys can see every single settings that I'm tweaking, what I'm switching, and what I'm doing, whatever. So first thing first, we're just gonna go into the menu in here, and I'm gonna go all the way up to the user menu. One second here. Okay, so we're going to the user menu, and we're gonna go to the record format. And in here, you can see that my record format, I'm shooting at 3840 by 2160 at 23.98 frames. So on top of that, on our best settings, right now it says that the shooting mode is customs. Usually I shoot on Cine EI, okay, and we're just going to execute this. So we're into Cine EI. I think it's going to, there it goes. I guess we didn't have to stop the recording because it's just the Atomos Shogun, recording the camera, what's going on the camera. So, the camera is not going to halt the recording process. And image scanner mode, that's scan mode, that's going to be normal. I don't mess with that. And we're going to go back here and let's go. So I have two XQD cards. So they're both 120 gigabytes, and they give me each about 65 minutes of recording. I mostly shoot weddings and commercials with this camera, and I bought the external extension unit. It's not the Sony fancy one that gives you ProRes RAW, but it's rather just one that allows you to hook up a V-mount battery, and I find it really handy because it allows me to hook up my monitor, not having to worry about bringing extra batteries for the monitor. So right now I'm not mounting the monitor up there because I have the SDI line hooked up, and it's not long enough, so it's not going to be able to mount up here. That's why I just left it down here, just to mitigate things, being tangled and whatnot. But most of the time, I just run an HDMI cable, and that works wonder. All right. So now we're gonna go to audio input. I always, get my audios in manual. So as you can see here, channel 1 is input 1, channel 2 is input 1. So I just combine those two inputs because I don't have to worry about hooking up, two different microphones. I never do that anyway. And when I do shoot a commercial or an interview, I just have, excuse me, external microphones that do handle that part. So, there is no confusion of audios, being mixed up or losing track of audio, whatever it is. Uh, Codecs, sorry, it's XAVC-I. That's what I shoot into. That codec does provide the best possible image quality and dynamic range. I just stick with that. I don't change anything on that. And for the SNQ mode, right now it's off, but I shoot 60 frames per second, and that in 4K. I know this camera can go up to 120 or 80 frames in HD. I've never tried it, and I quite frankly don't care about it because I never use that. I just use 4K 60, and I'm happy with it. Zebras, I set up my zebras at 70% on the Zebra 1, and for the Zebra 2, I leave them at 100%. Reason being is because when you're using a 90% gray card, it kind of helps you out a lot. I always use a monitor on my camera just so I can use my false colors, because I do trust false colors a lot more than I do trust these fancy zebras and whatnot. I mean, if I didn't have a monitor, I would of course rely on zebras uh, and other assets this camera offers, but I just never had the need for it. So, but just something. It's not a bad skill to know. Picture cache, I don't worry about that. I don't change anything. Output format. So in here right now, I'm pushing out an SDI, 1920 by 1080, but usually I shoot at 3840 by 2160. Unless you're a guy that shoot TV and whatnot, then you go all the way up to the 4096 to 2160. But that's not really my cup of tea, so I don't really worry about it. VF settings, I don't worry about that. Assignable dials, as you can see, my dials, assignable dial, I have the iris dial is iris assignable dial, so everything is just normal. I haven't really changed much in here. The only thing that I changed on my grip, I mapped the sneaky lower button in here to an 8-time magnification. So the top one is 4, the bottom one is 8, just so I can make sure that I can really uh, crop in and grab, make sure that everything is actually in focus. Because I don't use autofocus on this camera. I barely ever use autofocus on this camera. As a matter of fact, I really don't remember, the one time that I've used autofocus on this. I just think it's such a work of art to waste it using autofocus. And I'm not saying by any means that autofocus is not reliable. It is. Autofocus has come a long way. The only problem with it is that it's still really unpredictable, because when you go into a crowd and you have a lot of people and you're trying to focus on one specific person, autofocus cannot handle that. But even when you tap on the screen on the FX3, I own the FX3 as well, and that's what I'm filming with right now, which I mounted a vintage lens on it, surprisingly. And yeah, so even when you tap on the screen to focus on that person, sometimes it just jumps all over the place, and you can't really decide where it's focusing on. So I like my manual focus because I can pinpoint exactly where I want the camera to focus, at the very in very small increment, without having to worry about the camera jumping and whatnot. So right now, imagine if I was using autofocus. I'm pretty sure this thing would have been all over the place around the room. But right now, I just have it set up on me, and where I go. So we're just gonna move to the next one. I don't edit anything in here, so we're gonna go to the camera ISO and gain. So when you're in Cine EI, just remember this: when you're in Cine EI, you cannot change your ISO freely as you wish. It gives you 3 options. So you have a high, medium, and low. On my high, on my camera, I set it up to a 3200 EI. My medium is 2000 EI, and my low is 1000 EI. Reason why I did that is because when I'm outside and it's really bright outside, I can just bring it to 1000. When I'm indoors and it's not well lit, I'll just leave it at 2000, and the highest is 3200, which I don't really like, bringing my camera all the way to 3200, but if I have to, I don't mind doing it because it is what it is. Sometimes when we're shooting at venues, we don't really, dictate the lighting. But if I do have control of the lighting, I always like to leave my ISO at 2000 because that's the optimal base dynamic range uh, setting that this camera can offer. If I'm wrong, please correct me down in the comments. But if I remember right, that's what Alex Chapman said, that at 2000, that's the best, you know, dynamic range setting that you can get out of this camera, and that's where I usually set it up. Another thing to mention is that when you're shooting at Cine EI on this camera, setting up your white balance does not quite work. I'll show you once we get out of here. So when you do take your gray card or your white card, you put it up front, you press the button, it doesn't really do much. And you'll see that here in a bit. Uh, so we go to focus, I just go wide and center. So right now I'm on manual focus on the camera, so it doesn't really matter. Uh, so my shutter, I always use shutter angle with this camera because when I switch to SNQ to get that slow motion, it always comes clutch. Not having to worry about jumping in or switching settings, switching but the shutter angle just automatically adjusts to it. So it's one of the, biggest perks of having a cine camera, right? Color bars, I've never used them. I don't know how to use them. So if somebody knows how to use them, by all means, go ahead and tag me down there on your video. I'll be more than happy to check it out. Noise suppression, I just turn it off. I don't worry about it. I don't think it's that big of a deal because I use really fast lenses on this camera and I have neat video. So if I did have to do some noise correction post, it's usually really, really, really minimal. This camera is actually pretty good. I was actually shocked on its noise floor, by its noise floor. Flicker reduce, I just leave that off. Steady shot, we don't have steady shot on the camera, but it's in there because if you do have a lens that has stabilization, you can always use your lens stabilization to kind of like compensate with your camera. Your ABB, auto block balance, I don't know what it does, but every now and then when you do switch on the camera, it'll ask you to do a black balance something. I don't know really what it is, but you basically just cover your lens to the front and accept, and it'll run its thing. It takes like 5 to 10 seconds and it's done and you're good to go. And you don't have to do that every single time, but it's like maybe if you don't use the camera for a little while or you just change, drastic lighting changes, it'll ask you to do that. But it's not something that happens every single time, so peace of mind. Autofocus micro adjustment, I left it on, but I know it's not something that I really worry about because I think unless I'm using my Sony lenses on here, I don't really worry about autofocus. And the autofocus on this camera is not that reliable. That's one thing. If you really do like autofocus, I will ask you to stay away from this camera because it's going to disappoint you. It really is going to disappoint you. But, if you love manual focus, oof, this thing is a work of art. Video light set, I just lifted out power lane. Whatever that means, I just never worried about it. So that's your pen. Our audio, I explained earlier, all my audios are manual, and I just adjust things on my own. I don't like the camera, adjusting everything on me because you never know. These auto things sometimes just let you down. You don't want to shoot an entire interview or an event and then go home and just find out that your entire audio is ruined. And granted, I always have like extra audio devices to make sure that I have backups, but everything that you shoot in camera, that's the perfect thing because you don't have to redo that again. You don't have to worry about it. It's set in camera and you just drive on. Transferring audio files and all those things, it's extra work that we don't really have to worry about. But if you like to do that kind of stuff, by all means, I do understand that. So for me, I just record extra audio just to have the extra audio and have the flexibility in case something falls apart. I have a backup plan. That's pretty much it. So my video output, I don't have any LUTs on the camera right now, but just so you know, you can install LUTs and have them on your viewfinder, and you can utilize those LUTs anytime while shooting. And yeah, they they I don't know, I'm not sure if you can bake them into the footage, but I know you can display them on your viewfinder, on your EVF, and see them while you shoot, so you can make your adjustment based on that. So viewfinder, yeah, this is a somewhat important one. So my brightness, I just left it at 0. Color mode is just color. My picking settings is off. Picking type, color, frequency normal, normal picking, and color red. So basically, when I'll just get out of the menu real quick and show. So basically, when I'm looking at something, I can just go to my picking here, and it, usually when they're on, it'll show me where my focus is on the camera. Actually, they're on right now. I can see them, but the monitor is not showing it here, so you can't really see it. So I don't think it matters for me to show you guys that. But yeah, it just gives you the flexibility to see where your camera is focusing on, and it's pretty handy. It's really handy to have. But and I've seen a lot of people, everyone pretty much complained about this EVF, that it's not really that good, which I don't disagree, but I don't think it's that bad either. I mean, let's be honest here. If we compare this EVF to a lot of cameras that came out 7, 8, 9 years ago, like this thing, they weren't good either. That they were just subpar things that we just use. But at the end of the day, they're tools, and the better they are, the more helpful they are. And sometimes, they're just not to the standard we expect them to be, because these things are not cheap. This camera, 5, 6 years ago was $9,000, $10,000. So I totally understand if somebody spent $10,000 and got an EVF that's the quality of a Tetris game console. It's really disappointing. So I concur on that. So my zebras are off right now, but I usually, like I said, I leave my zebras at 70%, and my zebra 2 are at 100%. Marker, I don't worry about that really. And so right now, I got waveforms on my EVF, and of course, we are getting our image from through the SDI port. TCUB, this is time code stuff. I actually, if you do know, I know this camera can push out time code. Now, I'm not sure if you do need the extended device in order to do that, or you can just do that with or without it. But if you do know how to do that, please let me know, because I personally have never used a time code, because I've never had to shoot anything that requires a time code. But it's a skill, it's a good skill to learn, and if you do know how to do that, please help me out. I would love to learn. So, recording, basically everything that we've summed up there. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I think that pretty much sums up uh, all the FS7 most important settings that you do need to run this camera. So if anybody's got any questions, please go ahead and post them down there. I'll be more than happy to address them. And even if I do not address them, I know somebody in the comments will be more than happy to help out. That's how we do it in this channel. This is a family channel. We get together, we help one another get better, and then we achieve. But I hope that did address the question. I hope that did give some insight on the Sony FS7 for those who own it, and for those who are trying to get it or planning on getting it. I'm not gonna lie to you, this camera is amazing. It's great. I really do have zero complaint. Uh, I know everyone wants the newest and shiniest new toy out there, and if you do have the money, there is nothing wrong with that, really. If you do have the money, by all means, go ahead and spend it, and if you can justify the expense. But to me, if I can get something like this for $3,000, $4,000, build it up. Right now, it's probably at about $6,000, $7,000. Somebody would say, well, but buying a monitor, the lens, uh, the the all the kits and microphone and everything that you mount on it, it piles up to about $6,000, $7,000. But now imagine if you had to do the same thing, on a Sony FX6. The Sony FX6 will probably run you about $6,000 alone. Right now, they have a shortage, so you would be paying premium to get the camera, which would be about $7,000, $8,000 alone, and then you'd have to go through and get all of these accessories just to make it usable, and then you end up paying the same amount of money, if not twice the amount of money. At what price? Just because you don't want to sit on DaVinci Resolve and take 30 minutes to match footage. I mean, Hollywood does it all the time. Who am I not to want to do it? So, and it helps you learn. I'm by no means a DaVinci Resolve expert. I'm not a colorist by any means, but I think me using the FX3 and the Sony FS7 and matching my footage, oftentimes I will eventually get there. I know it's not going to be perfect, and nobody is born an expert, but we learn and we evolve with time. So that's the reason why I invested in this camera, because to this day this camera is still Netflix approved. It's one of the very few cameras out there that Netflix still approves, on their movies. And I think it's a great investment if you do have the money. Now, if you do have the money to go with an FX6, FX9, and you can justify the expense, and your company does require that, by all means, there is nothing wrong with that either, But I just feel like, for me and the level where my business is standing right now, I feel like this is a pretty good investment. It's a great investment because it allows me. This camera has taught me so much about film, about shooting, about all the intricate details that you do need to jumble up before you can even call yourself a videographer. I've learned them from this camera because it's the full package, really. I used to be so nervous about shooting manual focus. Now I feel nervous shooting autofocus because I can't control it. This thing, I can literally tell it where to focus, when to focus there, and when to switch focus to something else. I can just grab it, it's a block, go and do whatever. I can. So, yeah, if you do want to invest, you do feel like you'd like to invest on something like this, for the price that you can, you're literally buying a $10,000 camera at a discount for whatever. You can get it for about three. I think mine I bought it for $4,000. So the price of the FX3, and then I just got a monitor, which was another $700. About this Zacuto mount that I mounted on it, that was about another $700. The microphone. So this camera did not come with the grip, so I had to buy a grip for it. But all of those things did contribute into making this camera a full cinema camera that I can use, that I can rely on, and make it really reliable. And of course, I did buy the extension unit to mount V-mount batteries on it, which probably one of my best investments ever. So I hope you do like this review and you do like everything we went through. And if you do have any questions, please go ahead and ask them down there, and I'll be more than happy to address them. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful, beautiful day. Thank you.